When I was a small child, I was always talking to God. I thought I was going to be a priest or a monk or a minister for Christianity, but then when I was getting a little bit older, the Christians were telling me that only Christians can go to heaven, and I said to myself, I can't be a Christian. And during our trip to Bangalore, they said, well, if you go to Bangalore, you've got to see Sai Baba. And I said, who's Sai Baba? Yeah. And they said, oh, he's so, and I said, oh no, too many people. And then they stopped their car and they took out books from the trunk and they showed me pictures. And they said, you really just got to see this guy. They didn't say guy. And then Sunday I went to Whitefield. And I arrived at the bus stop and I walked to the gate and I had missed him by 10 minutes. There were several Americans there who were a little bit, let's say, missionary, to put it politely.
You missionary for Baba? Or
yeah,
like an evangelical?
Like how can you leave God? Yeah. How can you leave without seeing God? And I said, what? I was sitting in the house on the floor looking in Baba's eyes. It's rather than looking at him, it's like he is looking, being with him.
Yeah.
It's like when a song came to me in the garden years ago, it was, he is with us all of the time, O Sai Baba all of the time. But he came out for darshan in the morning, and at that time it was a dirt road, but he would just walk down the road, and I was sitting fairly close to the gate, on the ground, and he was walking on the women's side, and he turned and looked at me, and he looked in my eyes, and I had two experiences, and one of them I had just read recently, someone else had too. The first one was that I looked into his eyes, and I've looked into his eyes many times since then, and it was like looking into eternity, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Anantam, boundless God. I don't know if you've ever heard of
He prefers to be called Hanuman-Robert Conger from Portland, Oregon. His deep associations and loving ties to holy man Sri Satya Sai Baba go back decades and decades. Robert, or Hanuman, has mesmerizing stories of spiritual discovery. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in Portland, Oregon, USA, in October 2012.
This one is my favorite one as when he was young.
Just because of that angelic smile, youthful smile?
So beautiful, so beautiful.
Robert Conger, it's a delight to be with you. I just asked off camera a second ago what you've done in your real life for all these years, and you told me you were a monk. And I said, a Franciscan monk, a Trappist monk? No, a Baba monk.
Yeah.
So you're a self-proclaimed...
Well, no, just a God monk.
Just a God monk?
Yeah.
Well, tell me about how you became interested in God to the point where your whole house and life is filled with God.
Well, when I was a small child, I was always talking to God, and I also, the other thing was I was reading books about other countries all the time. I didn't know why, and I thought I was going to be a priest or a monk or a minister for Christianity, but then when I was getting a little bit older, the Christians were telling me that only Christians can go to heaven, and I said to myself, I can't be a Christian, to tell the truth. And then I studied to be a diplomat, and didn't become a diplomat, and decided to travel around the world for about 5 years, I thought. And I started hitchhiking in Europe for a year, and then crossed over to Africa for what I thought would be a year, and I stayed 2.5 years in Africa. You wouldn't believe how happy and wonderful the people are there. There's a guy who started a group called Engineers Without Borders. He's a professor from France at the University of Colorado. And he said in an interview with Bill Moyers, he said, I see more smiles in those villages in one day than I see in a whole year at the University of Colorado Engineering School.
What a great thought.
And then I was in West Africa, in Cameroon, and I was staying with a tribe that had basically no clothes, no religion, and I went to a nearby town, and I stayed with some Catholic priests called the White Fathers because they wore white. And one of the priests told me a a wonderful long story, which maybe I won't tell you now, but also a very short statement that I tell everyone.
What's that?
But the short statement is, he said, those pagans who everyone looks down on are more Christian than any Christian I've ever known in Europe.
Oh boy, were you touched by some golden
I was so
and
lucky.
wise thinking people?
I've been working on a book, and,
Yeah.
and one of my 2 or 3 favorite parts is West Africa. The people were so wonderful. But later in my travels, I did discover others around the world.
Well, later in your travels, later in your life, you discovered this man.
Oh, absolutely.
And I want to know how that Sai Baba came into your life.
What I mean later in my travels is going back and forth to Baba, because I would sort of finish I went one time going back to Baba. I spent a year going through South America.
It's the long route.
Yeah. So you want to know how I first met him?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was in Goa, and I stayed longer than I thought I would, and for several reasons. Including falling off of a motorbike.
That would hurt you.
And I ended up on the main road from western India to Madras that went through Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
I was hitchhiking, stood on the road, and usually a white person in 1970 in India, everybody stops. You just don't wait very long. Yeah. This time nobody stopped. and I remember, and then a truck driver came and he stepped on the brakes, and then he looked at me, and then he stepped on the gas. And I remember going like this, because I was wondering, and I had no idea that there might be something behind it, something else. And then a car came, an Indian car, gray car, with a man driver, and his wife was in the car and her sister. And they stopped for me about 20 yards after me. They were a little tentative,
Sure.
and said they were, going to take me to the next bus stop. And I explained I don't take buses because I hitchhike all over the world, and it just would take too much money to take public transportation for years and years and years. And they started to trust me, and during our trip to Bangalore, they said, well, if you go to Bangalore, you've got to see Sai Baba. And I said, who's Sai Baba?
Yeah.
And they said, oh, he's so, and I said, oh no, too many people. And then they stopped their car, and they took out books from the trunk, and they showed me pictures, and they said, you really just got to see this guy. They didn't say guy. But they also didn't say avatar or anything like that. But they said you should see him on a Thursday or a Sunday. And I didn't understand anything about Hinduism, or I'd never been involved with it or even attracted to it. And so I didn't know about the karma that was worked off just by the amount of moments you spend in the avatar's presence.
Sure.
And I certainly didn't know he was an avatar. So they talked me into going, and so I must have seen them on a Friday. Saturday I was in Bangalore. I went to the Lal Bagh Gardens, and then Sunday I went to Whitefield. And I arrived at the bus stop, and I walked to the gate, and I had missed him by 10 minutes. He had left on a 5-day trip to Anantapur.
Were you heartbroken because there was your chance to meet the avatar?
Well, I didn't, but I didn't know anything. All I knew is they said, you should see this guy who is very famous. I had no idea who he was, and so I didn't feel, anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't feel any loss or sadness. And then I was walking back to the bus stop, and an English couple were walking on the road there, and they said, how are you, or who are you, and I said, what are you doing, or where are you going? And I said, well, tomorrow I go to Madras, and then I go to Sri Lanka, and I'm behind schedule, so I have to hurry because I have to get to Nepal.
So much for Sai Baba.
Yeah. And they said, no, come and have lunch with us in the little village near the ashram, Kadugodi. And so I went to have lunch. There were several Americans there who were a little bit, let's say, missionary, to put it politely.
Were you missionary for Baba, or like an evangelical?
Like, how can you leave God?
Yeah.
How can you leave without seeing God? And I said, what? God, what are you talking about? I mean, all I knew about was Jesus, and he was, supposed to be the Son of God or something. And so, never even heard of an avatar, or the concept of an avatar. And so, but there was an Indian woman there. Her name was Leela, and she was so peaceful. She was a nun, And she said, "Why don't you come and stay?" And of course, I had no idea about.
She was a Catholic nun, you think?
No, Hindu.
Okay.
Yeah, she was sannyasin, and she said, "Why don't you come and stay with these two families while Baba's gone, and then see him when he gets back, and then go."
What good luck for you.
Well, it's just all Baba. I mean, it's all Baba. And so, I mean, if I hadn't fallen off that thing, and if anybody else had picked me up, you know this, I could tell you a wonderful story maybe later. So
So you
stayed
stayed with
the
these
two
people?
families. One of them lived next to Dr. Padmanabhan, the man who
Oh,
carried his handkerchief, and the father of two well-known
He
devotees
followed Baba
today.
for years.
Oh yeah, and so he'd known Baba since he was
dentist, I
18
think,
years
yeah.
old. So he told me stories. He and his wife and his children were very short and small then.
And Dr. Padmanabhan told you stories.
All these stories that So I heard these unbelievable
Before
stories.
even laying eyes on Sai Baba.
Oh, absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, because after hearing the stories, I thought, well, I'll stay with this guy, because I had always been spiritually, seeking, and even letters I wrote from Africa, I said, I know I'm looking for God, I just don't know where.
And I'm trying to remember the year you told at the outset. This is 1970, maybe?
70, yeah.
1970.
70, yeah.
Wow.
So, so I decided, and I even went to a home. They took me to a home where Vibhuti was coming out of a photograph, and I thought, how are they making it stay on the photograph? It couldn't be true. And so I decided to stay with Baba for 2 weeks, because again, I was going to Sri Lanka, and I wanted to. It was April, and I wanted to be in Nepal before June, when the monsoons would come, and I couldn't see the mountains. And I love mountains.
Yeah.
I love mountains, Himalayas. So
No mountains in Bangalore.
No mountains in Bangalore. But yeah, so he came back. I was staying with he came back, and I was actually, two guys offered me to stay in their place for those 2 weeks that I was planning to stay. One of them is the one that wrote Love Is My Form. Yeah, his name is Bruce. And I was staying with them. Baba came back. He came out for darshan in the morning, and at that time it was a dirt road, and the women sat on one side of the road and the men sat on the other, and
This
Baba
is
would
probably
walk.
around the tree, huh?
Yeah, the tree wasn't there yet. The tree was there, yes.
Yeah.
But he would just walk down the road, and I was sitting fairly close to the gate, on the ground, and he was walking on the women's side, and he turned and looked at me, and he looked in my eyes, and I had two experiences. And one of them I had just read recently, someone else had too. The first one was that I looked into his eyes, and I've looked into his eyes many times since then, and it was like looking into eternity, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Anantam, boundless God. And it was like there was no end. And just recently I read someone had the same experience. The other thing is that I knew that he knew me, and I was foolish enough to be confident about myself. I'm like, yeah. So I was.
Before you go on,
yeah.
tell me a little bit more, because I've only been in your house 5 minutes before starting this interview, finally getting the camera and turning it on. And you mentioned to me something twice that was very intriguing. Plus you showed me a bunch of pictures, which we'll show later. Focusing on his eyes. What is it about those eyes? Even in the photographs.
Okay, no, we'll get to that.
Okay.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. So the afternoon came, and Baba walked up to me. He smiled in my eyes, looking down at me, and then he bent over, and he whispered in this ear, "Tomorrow." I don't know if you can hear it. Tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah, we got it.
And he whispered it so softly that only person who heard that was the man next to me. And when Baba went on, the man next to me said, "Oh, tomorrow you're going to have an interview with Baba." And so the next day, I waited in the morning and afternoon, and there was no interviews. And I was surprised, but I wasn't concerned, because I wasn't a devotee. I didn't come with an agenda. I mean, wanting something from him, or even the ego pat that says I had an interview, and nothing like that. So I just, went back to where I was staying. And you asked about the photograph.
Yeah, I
Let's
did.
see if I can find it. I'm going to put this down for a second.
Okay, but
you
remember,
want to stop it for a minute?
No, I want to
Okay.
take the microphone off. Take the microphone off. There we go. Okay.
Now,
No, we're going to use all this. I'm not going to stop it at all.
Okay,
This,
we're
your
not
house
gonna-
is too rich with Baba in it. It's coming out of all the pores of this house.
okay. Now, someone had already given me.
Just hold that
this
as steady as you
photograph.
can. All right.
Yeah.
And this is the one that.
Yeah, someone already gave me this photograph, and I was sitting in the house on the floor looking in Baba's eyes. Since this time, I have always liked pictures where I could look Baba in the eyes. It's rather than looking at him, it's like he is looking, being with him.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when a song came to me in the garden years ago, it was, "He is with us all of the time, O Sai Baba, all of the time." But now it's, "You are with us all of the time, O Sai Baba, all of the time."
And I think one day you'll find yourself singing to yourself. I'm just going to guess and throw it out here. I am with us all of the time.
Oh, God willing, God willing. So hum, so hum. He told us many times, so hum. I am. So
Okay.
I'll put this down.
Yeah.
So I was looking in his eyes, and there was a window behind me,
Mm-hmm.
and the sun was moving. And I didn't know, of course, the sun was moving, but it came moved to a point where there was a ray of light, and it came down and made a circle through the window and made a circle of light right here, just a circle of light right here. And for some reason, I stopped looking in his eyes and I started looking into the circle of light.
Uh-huh.
And I began to see things in color.
You
The
did.
first thing I saw were buildings built into a mountainside made out of the same material, somewhat like the Berber places in Morocco, but it wasn't them.
Where did that image come from?
I've never seen it this lifetime other than there.
Mhm.
And then I saw a river, and there was sandbanks and tufts of grass on the side of the river. And then I saw it was above the ocean, and there was this little speck in the ocean, just a small speck. And I got, over a period of time, however Baba did it, I became closer and closer to that speck, and I saw it was a boat, and I saw the blue water and the white wake as the boat was moving, and I got close enough that I saw it was a fishing boat. Well, I ended up close enough so I was right above it, and I could see it was a gray and white boat, a fishing boat, and there were two people on it. One was standing on the side near the cabin, and one was sitting in the back steering. And they both had something black on the top of their heads. I couldn't see their faces, but I knew it had to be my mother and father in their fishing boat.
Wow.
And I had never seen the boat before.
Were they alive still?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'd never seen the boat before after they, it was happening right then, I'm sure. And
So you saw them in real time.
in real time. What came to my mind was, this must be the power of a yogi to see far away, you know. In fact, a friend of mine bought me a crystal ball because of that. But
Well,
after a few-
you were granted this vision for a reason.
yeah, oh, absolutely. He was an introduction to Baba. I mean, you know, he's here. I am staying 2 weeks, and he says to me tomorrow, and then he shows me my parents. And when I
And this
went home,
splotch of
when
light
I-
on his robe.
when I went home, there was this boat, the same boat, and there were the black. When I painted their boat, there was the black hats that they were wearing. You know, it was for real.
It was unmistakable. Well, what
So-
an introduction to Baba. Did
Okay,
you ever
well,
have
that
that
was-
meeting that day
that-
or not?
Pardon?
Did you ever have that interview that
Oh
day?
no
or
no
not?
no.
He just
2 weeks. Remember, we got 2 weeks.
That's
to
right.
work
That's
with.
right.
And the 2 weeks, he said, Baba said tomorrow 4 times. So we'll get number 2 now. Number 2 time, same thing, no interview, but he said tomorrow. Went back to the same house, and I had been hearing the Westerners talking to each other about meditation, which I had never done before, although I realized looking back that I'd had meditative experiences, like lying on the top of a truck of dates going across the Sahara Desert at night looking at the stars. You can't be anything but meditative, you know, I mean, if you're awake. And then as a child, I remember that state of being.
Robert, let me ask you a real quick question. I'm thinking of it. Don't lose your place. I have a feeling you
yeah.
won't lose your place.
No,
When he said to you tomorrow, and your buddy and everybody sort of indicated.
no, the one man said.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said, Bob's
Interview.
going to have you for an interview tomorrow. And tomorrow came by and you had this wonderful experience, but no interview. It reminds me of when Jody and I were in Vrindavan, and Baba called us in for an interview. It was a great occasion. And at the end of it, he said, I'll see you on the 14th. This was maybe the 10th. So it was several days to wait. And we planned on waiting. And he said it more than once, and he underscored it. And every time I'd see him in the darshan light, I'd hold up my little envelope to give with him. I'm a reporter, so I write headlines on the outside. 14th, Baba, don't forget. Big mistake. Didn't know that at the time. Next day, 14th, Baba, day after tomorrow. Finally, the day came. Today's the 14th, Baba. And he would take the letters, but as you know, no interview.
Yeah.
So what makes you think that he says these things that he doesn't seem to deliver on the way we want him to deliver?
I'll tell you a story, and then we'll get back to the other. I'll tell you a story. I was living in New Mexico in the 1980s, in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I heard somehow that Baba was coming to California. I was, of course, excited.
Yeah.
I called my friend Muriel Ingalls, who lived in Santa Barbara, who was on the national board of the organization. And I said, is it true Baba's coming to California? And she said, yes, it's true. And I said, well, when is he coming? And she said, you know, but she's on the national board.
Yeah.
She said, the board members, I've never seen so much ego in my life. They're all competing with where is he going to stay, who is he going to be with, who's going to walk next to him, Allah. And so, when I heard that, I said, uh-oh, to myself and to her. I said, uh-oh. I want
Deal
you to,
breaker.
I said, call me when his plane leaves Hong Kong. And he didn't come.
Yeah.
And he said later, I was told, he said, the Americans were not ready.
Yeah.
So everything is remember three of my favorite sayings of his. Three of my favorite sayings. Well, there are even more, but I put them together. Is life is work, do it. Life is a test, pass it. Life is a game, play it. All at the same time.
So do your duty.
And so if we don't pass the test, we don't get the fruit. You know.
So, and we're still waiting for the 14th. Maybe he meant the 14th 10 years from now.
Or 14 lifetimes from now.
Oh, God, don't say that.
No, but what's wrong with that? I mean,
Okay,
look,
we'll
here's
hang
four
around.
more of my favorite sayings. I love these, and I tell them to so many older people here in America, but as well as, you know, everyone has grandparents and parents,
Yeah.
and some people are very sick and think that this is their only lifetime. So here are my four. I put them together, even though he
Go
said
ahead.
them in separate times. First one, birth is a terminal illness. Second one, death is like changing your clothes.
I like that one.
Third one, everyone has so many lifetimes they can't even count them. And the last one I love, everyone is walking on their own path at their own pace according to their own light, and everyone will reach the goal sooner or later.
And they're
So-
all given the little bumps and hiccups along the way that are unique to their need to
that-
stay on that bus until it reaches
Well,
its
he
ultimate
says everyone
destination.
has their own lock and their own key.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Everyone has their own. I like that. I don't think I've heard that before.
yeah.
Everyone has their own lock and their own key.
Yeah, there's a group of sayings I say always when I talk to Americans and others that I put together over the years since the 1980s. Maybe I'll end up telling you them, but
Okay.
that's one of them.
Well, did we get back to finishing your story
Yeah, no,
that I
not-
interrupted
not
you
e-
about?
Not even be close. So, the Westerners in Vrindavan, I'd overhear them talking, and one of them would say, well, I meditated yesterday for 2 hours, and I had this, oh, you can't believe this experience. And the other one would say, well, I meditated for 4 hours, and you would not believe. So I was thinking to myself, I better start doing some of this stuff, meditation stuff, you know. So he said tomorrow, got back to the house, put his picture on the wall, the same picture, so I would see his eyes, and I crossed my legs, and I sat with my back, and something sort of seemed to say straighter, straighter, you know, so I was sitting properly and trying to be peaceful, you know, inwardly, and there came a time when I began to feel pain in both my legs and my back.
Was it from sitting or something else?
Yeah, I was sitting, back end pain, I mean, sitting, I never sat like that before. And it was in upper legs and my back. And over a period of minutes, I don't know how long, the pain became quite severe, almost like cramping. And I said to myself, I am not going to be doing this for 4 hours a day. At the same time I said, just after I said that to myself, all the pain turned into the sweetest pleasure you can imagine.
Really?
Just wonderful pleasure.
Boy, he found a playmate in you, didn't he, Baba?
Well, what came to my mind, actually, because he answered a question I had as a child, what came to my mind was that when I was a child, I was very spiritual, so I was reading a lot of spiritual, mostly Christian stuff. And I read about the lions tearing the Christians to pieces in the Colosseum in Rome. And yet the writer said the Christians were peaceful and happy, and smiling and peaceful while they were being torn to pieces. And I was a child, and I was thinking, this couldn't be true. And what came to my mind was maybe God gave this to them at that time.
Just like he took away your pain.
Later, I read in Hislop's question and answer book, one of his books, he asked Baba, why do people like Prahlada, Prahlada who was tortured, or Jesus, why do they suffer for you? Why do they have to suffer? And he said they did not suffer. Yeah.
They put on the cloak of their duty and performed their role and didn't feel the consequences of it.
That was number 2 tomorrow. Yeah.
That was number 2. This is great. Keep going.
Number 3. This time Baba called a group of us. He said tomorrow, and he called a group of us in for an interview, and we became like a real special group.
So this is day 2 that you've been in Baba's presence?
No, this is during the 2 weeks.
Oh, during the 2 weeks,
Yeah,
okay.
during the 2
This is
weeks.
your first time being called in for an interview, though?
Yeah, first time in for an interview.
So you went in with a group?
And we went in as a group, and we became like a family. He said, we spent a lot of time with him, and eating with him, and him teaching us singing, and we ended up sleeping in his house because for different reasons, and so he called us in, and he was sitting in his chair, and he was talking to us, and I was sitting with my back against the door. It was a small room, rectangle. His hands were like this, hanging in front of him, and I was looking at him just as plainly as I'm looking at you. And suddenly I saw many arms coming out of his body, many hands at the ends of each of those arms, and in between his fingers I saw eyes looking out at us.
Oh, wow.
And I said to myself, he wants us to be his hands and his eyes, is what I said to myself. And later I told this to many people too, because later I told people, I read in his speeches 2 things. He said, I want you to be my engineers and workmen in again building the bridge to God. And he said, I want you to be my officers and soldiers in fighting the war against unrighteousness.
This is such a moving opportunity to be with you, Robert. I feel really compelled right now because the moment is ripe. We'll continue with the interview, but I want you to sing as you did that first chant when Baba.
Okay.
Just because
let me tell you the story of it.
Okay, it's so beautiful, and you have such a good voice, and
Baba used to
and the
have
motion is so proper.
Baba used to have us sing. Okay, I'll tell you about singing. I have one of the chapters in the book is about all this, but the first song we ever sang in English was "Door of My Heart" by Yogananda, and a young woman named Michelle changed a few of the words of that, and. So, Baba says when you sing, there's 3 things that are important. The beauty of the melody, the rhythm, and the meaning. Well, all of the songs we had sung before were in Hindi or Sanskrit. So I had the beauty and I had the rhythm, but I didn't have the meaning. Part. And I never grew up loving Rama and Krishna like someone in India would, which is okay. And that's part of being universal. And so this was our first time, and I was going through a sadhana at that time, a special one that I had no idea that I was going to be doing, about only eating food. If you read all those chapters, you read about it, but only eating the food that fruits, nuts, and liquids that people gave to me, and so it wasn't easy necessarily, especially in the beginning. And so he called us into his house. And we sang the English song for him. We sang, Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, precious Baba, come to me? Will this day fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Oh, night and day, I look for thee night and day. And I had my eyes closed.
Yeah.
And tears were just rolling down my face because it was in English and it was to him and my heart. And someone told me he was looking at me the whole time we sang. And then he smiled in my eyes and he went like this, like he was eating something, and he was telling me that, you know,
He put his hand
the way
in his
I
mouth?
interpreted that, he went like this,
Uh-huh.
you know. The way I interpreted that was that he knew what I was doing. It was the right thing to be doing, and don't listen to other people that are saying, why are you doing this, and don't do this, and, you know, eating only what was being given. And as I told you, as you read in the chapter then, if you did, it was about Biafra. It was about the genocide in Africa.
I should make a point right now, too, because you sent me some wonderful chapters. I hope you sent me the whole book when it's done.
God willing, God willing.
And with your permission, you'll spread it, and I'll spread it, too. And people
God
can
willing.
find it, because I'm going to be posting it on 2 sites, and I'll just say this parenthetically right now. Those who have Facebook, they would go to facebook.com/Souljourns, Souljourns. And then the more likely place to find it with more space is our Souljourns network, which is simply souljourns.net.
Yeah, but you know what this is? This is not a...
People can read about your
this
great
is not
stories.
a quote-unquote Baba book.
I know. It's your life story.
Spiritual memoir.
Yeah. Well, just like the song.
I didn't even know the word memoir before I started.
You
I didn't
now.
know the word spiritual memoir till about 5 years into it.
And
I've been working on it for 10 years.
And you said the song you just sang was to Yogananda. About
no,
Yoga.
no, that was by Yogananda.
By
It was
Yogananda.
To Baba.
To Baba.
So that was the first one we sang. The second English song we sang, and I won't sing it for you, but was "Love Is My Form." Everyone knows that.
Sure, I interviewed the fellow who
and
wrote
then,
that.
But Baba had us singing. We used to lead songs through. About 6 of us used to lead songs at the tree on Thursdays and Sundays, and we used to lead songs in Putta Party in the temple. And so the song he always told me to sing was Satyam Jnanam. And
That's
it was
the one I want you to
and
hear.
the one I sang from my heart. Well, what happened was, after I had sung it a while, I wanted to know what the words meant. So I had
So you can get part 3.
I had a family, I knew a family, they were actually a Christian family. They owned a farm called Hope Farm on the way to Whitefield. I met them when I was walking back and forth. And I asked them to help me translate it. And Satyam, true, Jnanam, knowing, Anantam, boundless, and then Brahma, God. So they helped me translate it. So the next day, Baba calls us in, and we're on the back porch of his house, veranda, and we're singing. And he says, "Sing Satyam Jnanam." So I sang it. And then he went like this, and he says, "Does anybody know what it means?" No, that's a playmate.
That's hilarious.
That's a playmate.
Well, you got to
So
sing it now.
I'll sing it now.
You got to
okay?
sing it now.
Satyam. I gotta stop laughing first. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Satyam Brahma. Jnanam Brahma. Anantam Brahma. Anantam Brahma. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. And then true knowing boundless God. True knowing boundless God. True God. Knowing God. And then I add loving God. Joyful God. Beautiful God. Peaceful God. Boundless God. Boundless God. True knowing boundless God. Satyam Jnanam Brahma.
Oh, wow. Robert, you really got that third part down.
Well, that's why he probably asked me to sing it. God knows.
Does anybody know what these words mean?
Yeah, it makes me naturally high just singing.
Oh, yeah. And this is just part of your first trip
Well,
to
this is
Sai
just
Baba
after
in
2 interviews.
1970.
Wait till you hear the third. Okay, third one. Okay, now the fourth one is my favorite.
Okay.
The fourth tomorrow. This is the special one in some ways. When I was in Goa, after I fell down and hurt my knee,
Yeah.
I had to stay in a beach town, but it was a little village, and most of the people actually there were, rather than the place I was in before, were sort of spiritual seekers. And there I met a Japanese monk who had studied in Vietnam with a Buddhist master, and he was speaking to me in French. And he told me how his Buddhist master levitated, and I said, "I'll believe that when I see it." But he told me a story, and it really hit me hard because you'll see. He said that after his master died, he started wandering around Southeast Asia, visiting people who he heard were saints.
Yeah.
Heard about a woman in Cambodia. Went to the village where he was told to go. The villager said, "You have to speak to her son." Her son lived on the outskirts of the village. He went to the son. He said, "I'd like to visit with your mother." And he said, "Wait, I'll go inside and I'll meditate and see if she wants you to come." So he went inside, came back out. So my mother says, "You can come." He says, "Walk in that direction and she'll guide you." And so he started to walk. He told me he walked about 2 hours. I don't remember if I didn't ask him if there was a trail, but he said he walked about 2 hours and he got to a clearing in the jungle. And there was a small hut, and he knocked on the door, and she was there, and she invited him in. And after talking a little bit, she said, "I'll make you some tea." And while she was making the tea, he realized he had to go to the bathroom. He was speaking to me in French, "Madame, je veux pisser." He was speaking to her in Vietnamese. And she said, "Go ahead." He went outside, and within a very, 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 very short time, he came back in the house, closed the door, and stood like this against the door, and he said, "Madame, Madame, il y a un tigre là. There's a tiger outside." And I said, "Did you go to the bathroom?"
I'll bet he did.
And he said, "No, not then." But he stayed with her for 3 days.
Oh.
And every night at dusk, all these different wild animals, some of them who were naturally food for the others, would come to sleep in the clearing, and she would walk among them and pet them and talk to them.
Oh, what a beautiful story.
And you don't know, I love animals so much.
What if you were St. Francis in a previous life?
So much. I'll tell you one of my favorite sayings. Anyway.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me one of your favorite
sayings of Baba's.
Yeah.
He says,
"How could we pass up on that?"
Divinity goes through all of life like an electric current through a wire. Out of the wire come light bulbs. Even a rock has a few watts. Rocco, no. Oh, God.
Was Rocco here?
Okay, Rocco's here. Okay, you got to lie down, boy.
No, Rocco's got the...
as long as he doesn't jump on you.
Rocco's going to make his camera debut here.
Okay, Rocco,
Here,
come on. Come here. Come on. Now lie down. Good boy. Good boy.
Rocco wants to be where all the action is.
Rocco, here comes
It's
Nicky.
okay.
They're not supposed to
There's
be here.
nothing in that bag.
I actually locked the gate.
Oh, who's this?
This is Nicky.
Rocco's licking my hand. Camera's shaking.
Rocco, come. Sorry, camera, but Rocco, Nicky.
And now Nicky is...
Nicky kisses faces.
Nicky wants to kiss
Nicky,
my
come,
face.
Come. Okay, now come here.
This
come here.
is, without question, the
No, you lie
most
down.
interesting
Lie
Baba
down.
devotee interview I think I've ever done.
Lie down. Okay,
Yeah.
babies. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, lie down. Stay. Okay.
Now, why do you suppose Baba had them come up just now?
Make me more human. Okay, but that's what. Okay, here's the
We'll
thing.
just
Here's the
pretend
thing. Are you ready?
Pretend they're fine.
Are
and
you
I'll
ready?
just- yeah,
Are you
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, this is so cool. This is Baba. Okay, even a rock has a few watts.
That's just where you were when you
Okay,
were talking.
and then you have plants that have more, and insects, and fish,
You can let them roam.
and strong animals.
Yeah.
Animals, and then above the animals with more watts are people. People have the most watts, but Baba said sometimes the people light bulb gets so dirty you get more light out of some of the others.
So probably these
And when
dogs would give more light than
than
100
many
people.
people
some
I
of us
know in this country, to tell the truth.
And Baba would love these dogs.
I'll tell you a real quick story. I was in Ethiopia. I was with an Ethiopian
Well, how did you
friend.
get around so much? Just hitchhiking?
Hitchhiking, yeah. I planned on a year, stayed 2.5 in Africa because the people were so wonderful. So I'm in Ethiopia. I'm with a friend, and a bus stops in front of us, and one of his friends gets off the bus.
Yeah.
You couldn't believe how happy they were to see each other. The eyes smiling, the hugging, the
Just
kissing.
a wonderful reunion.
Oh, couldn't. I said, when did you last see him? Yesterday. I said in my book, I see people coming, greeting each other in airports, family members. And then I said, come to think of it, when I come home, my dog Tally jumps as high as the top of the gate.
Yeah.
She is so excited to see us.
Robert, who is Sai Baba? I just feel compelled to ask you that now.
Who is Sai Baba?
Yeah.
Huh.
That stopped you in your tracks.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's just that the words are so. Who is Sai Baba? Gosh, let me tell you the fourth story first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't forget that question, though.
Yeah. So when the Japanese man told me that, the monk, I wrote down the name. You have to lie down. You have to lie down. Lie down. I wrote down the name. We could stop it and I could put him
No, that's
downstairs.
right.
But see, he'll crawl over. He'll jump on you.
That's okay. We're going to continue with a second interview because this is so good in just a couple of minutes. So finish that story and my question, and then we'll take a break.
I wrote down the name and the address of the woman, but by the time I got to that part of Asia, there was a war, and I couldn't go to Cambodia, so I couldn't see her. And so that, I couldn't happen. So this was the fourth time Baba said tomorrow. I was living at the time in a pump house in a potato patch.
Okay, at a pump house in a potato patch.
About a mile the other side towards Bangalore, towards Madras from the ashram.
Did anybody else know you were living in a pump house in a potato patch?
The people that owned the potato field did. I don't know. I didn't ask. But I was so happy there. It was wonderful. I was in the middle of nature, and there was a place I could meditate in the mornings. But the problem was I was now working in Baba's garden 5 days a week, every day but Thursday and Sunday. And I take a nap every day, and the heat from the sun coming back from my nap and going back to the ashram was no fun at all. So I, good boy, stay. I decided to sleep in take my nap in Baba's garden. So this was the fourth time Baba said tomorrow. I was in the garden. I put down a small blanket. I lay down on my stomach.
Yeah.
And stay, Nikki. Stay. Good girl. With my feet pointed down like this.
Yeah.
I'm lying down on my stomach. There he goes. There
That's
they
okay.
go.
That's all right.
Lying down on my stomach. And
thank you, Baba, for that interesting interruption you brought into our lives. The dogs are enjoying life in another part of this home. And Robert, do you remember where you were telling your story?
yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had walked Baba had said tomorrow. I went to the garden. I worked in the garden in the morning. And then I put my blanket down, a small blanket, and lay down on my stomach. Can I show you? Should I show you how it was?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to show you.
Well, that be my microphone.
Yeah, this is for real.
Okay, go ahead.
I lay down on my stomach like this, with my head here.
This is inside or outside?
Outside, in the garden.
In
Baba's garden. In the inner
Potato,
garden, where nobody comes.
Yeah. Okay, you're there.
And my feet are pointed like this, and I'm awake.
Okay.
And I feel something picking up one of my feet, and moving it on its side, and then putting it down as gently as a baby would do. And then something picked up my other foot, put it like that, and put it down, so I was actually more comfortable for sleeping.
I'll bet you I can guess who that was.
Well, I couldn't yet at the time. And then something started picking the dirt off the bottom of my feet.
What?
And I still didn't know what it was. But then I had sort of short pants on down to here, and I have hair in my legs, so when I felt something going like this, I knew it was a monkey.
Oh, it's a monkey.
Yeah, and then another monkey came and did my arm, and then another monkey came and stood on my back and did the back of my neck. And then the last thing that happened before, the same American who said to me I would have an interview that first tomorrow, one of the little monkey came around, and kissed me on the cheek.
Oh my! So
And
they
these
were
are
showing
wild,
affection.
These were wild monkeys. I mean, these are monkeys that people throw rocks at to get them out of the garden.
They felt your
And
aura.
no, this is Baba. They didn't. Baba, boss. I mean, you said is Baba God? I mean, who else? I mean, he was showing me his power, and I've heard he had power through animals before. But he also showed me that I wasn't going to have that opportunity to be with that woman, and he gave me a wonderful wild animal experience. Wonderful one. Yeah.
So that pretty much is a great answer for my question of who is Baba.
Oh, look, everywhere for everyone. Omnipotent, can do anything anywhere. Omnipresent, is everywhere. Omniscient, knows everything. I mean, I've had miracles happen in this house. I had a miracle happen in New Mexico. When I was working on the book so much in the beginning, I would smell vibhuti all the time.
And what do you say to a person who says, Robert, where do all the bumps and grinds and periods of travail and pain come from, and what purpose do they serve in our lives?
Oh, that.
Yeah, I mean, that's Baba too. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah,
if Baba's
absolutely.
everything as you say, that's what
Yeah.
Baba is too.
Okay, one of his sayings is, maybe I can tell you just briefly these sayings I tell everyone,
Mhm.
and then we'll work on that
Yeah.
one. Okay, I love these. I love these. First, okay, I'm just going to go through them.
Yeah.
Baba says, God is like the ocean. Each person is like the wave.
Mhm.
The wave is not the ocean. It can never be the ocean, but it's the same water, same water.
Mhm.
Love, peace, joy, beauty, harmony, wisdom. True self never changes, never dies. He says true self is like the sun in the sky. Problems are like the clouds.
Passing
Fear,
clouds.
pride, selfishness, anger, jealousy, envy, lust, and then tuk, 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 no peace. Our work in life, learn to see our own clouds and do things that make them go away. At the same time, find the things that help us to be sunshine, because that makes the clouds go away. Three sayings I've always said at the same time, and number one has two underneath it in the last few years, even though I've known them much longer. First one, and this is probably going to be the title of my book.
Mhm.
One school, the world. One teacher, God. One book, and then people lean forward. Some immediately say Bible, but it's one book, life.
Life is the book.
And he says, your life is your book. The only one who knows it better than you possibly can is God. And you can know it as much or as little as you want. The second one, okay, the first one underneath that, I told you,
Mhm.
everyone has their own lock and their own
Yeah,
key.
I like that.
Second one, God can give you the boat, God can give you the oars, but you still have to row your own boat.
You have to do the work. You have to do your work.
Second of the original three, he says on the watch, if you can just keep your eye on the second hand, if you can just keep your eye on the second hand, the minute hand and the hour hands go round by themselves. And the third one, he says, make yourself into a flute through which God can play his music. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Now, I add two more for Westerners, especially Americans, to tell the truth. But I usually tell other people just so they can laugh at us, because they do. You wouldn't believe. Two words: attachment, detachment.
Mhm.
I tell people, think of a relationship that's not easy. It could be your parent, one of your parents, could be a partner, it could be even a boss, something like that. So you imagine yourself in that situation where you are feeling sunshine in a place.
Yeah.
You're feeling sunshine, and the person comes into that situation and they're being cloudy. Baba says, if their clouds make you cloudy, you're attached. But if you can stay sunshine, you're detached. And he said the secret of relationships is detachment. So what I do when I'm talking to people, I give them some advice. I say the first thing you do is you take a deep breath, and I'm going to show you just stillness in the eyes. It's nothing special because camels have it, dogs in nature have it. Children in America usually lose it by the time they're 3 years old, but the people in the villages have it their whole lives. Baba says pure love is only possible at moments of true peace. So I'm going to show you peace just for a minute. And usually I don't even blink, but I didn't sleep a lot last night. So I tell people, the first thing you do, you're there, you're beginning to feel yourself being cloudy, take the deep breath, get into your center. You know, like Baba says, head in the forest, hands in society. If it doesn't work, go to the bathroom. And then if you're in a relationship, walk the dog, vacation, separation, divorce, but start with the deep breath and the bathroom. Now, the second one he says, which is one of my very favorites of his, it's a wonderful one. He says, your growth as a human being is like planting a small tree in the ground. In the beginning, you got to put thorns around it to keep the cows and goats from eating it. In the long run, the same tree, if you become less and less cloudy and more sunshine, you become a big tree, bigger. And the same cows and goats who would have eaten you before can come for shade if they want. Choo, choo, choo. Relationships, you're only responsible for yourself. You're only responsible for yourself.
Wow, this has been one of the most unusual interviews and one of the most delightful and useful I think I can ever remember. You know, in a career,
what are monks for?
in a career as a newscaster, working for a TV station for 38 years and another 44 years total in various stations. This isn't boasting. This is just the job of a newsman. I've probably done 10,000 interviews, 10,000. And in my spiritual work, in the hundreds, several hundred, nothing has ever been quite like this. And it prompts me to ask the question. This is going to be a great teaching. Even Baba's words and Baba's lessons, but coming from your heart, the filter of your heart.
You know where
Let me ask my question.
Okay.
The question is, do you teach?
Okay. I'll answer your first statement first.
Okay.
I learned to become free in Africa and in the villages and parts of the. One time, I was in a village in Asia on one of my trips back from India, and they said, a small village, and they said, why do you come and stay with us? They're poor, they're uneducated, and the people from the big cities who come to supposedly serve them really talk down to them as inferior. So they feel like they're not worthy.
Yeah.
And they say, why do you come and stay with us? And I stopped and I said from my heart, and I'll never forget, and I repeat it often, India's my school, America's my work, and this is my hospital. I advise young people all the time who have good hearts, go in the Peace Corps. Be in those villages. Come back with that inner strength that allows you to be free, to be who you really are, who they are all the time, and then be with our children, help our children, work with our children.
Well, you're talking to some receptive ears. I spent 2 years in 68 to 70 in the Peace Corps.
Where?
Paraguay, South America,
Okay.
second poorest country, next to Haiti and all the Americas, Caribbean, all the way down to the bottom of Argentina.
Yeah.
And, and curiously, my wife Jody really brought me to Baba on, if there's 20 levels, she brought me to Baba on 20 levels. But it was in 1968 or 69 that I first saw his picture in an old magazine, and I wondered, who in the heck is this fella? Knowing not for a second my life would be forever changed by his intrusion into my life, which I'm forever grateful for. You just don't know, do you, Robert?
When I was a child, I thought, if I could just be with Jesus, then I'd really know what it's all about. When I was a teenager, I read the most wonderful passage I've ever read in Christian literature, which is by Khalil Gibran and the Prophet. It's in his chapter on giving. And he says, and then there are those who, as in yonder valley, The myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes he smiles upon the earth. And I read that and I said, that's Jesus. That's Jesus.
Robert, we're going to have to end on,
Yes.
on this note, and it's just a delightful note. You've got Jesus, Baba, Robert, and everyone in the world.
Don't forget Buddha.
And Buddha, and Yogananda, and many, many more priests, nuns, monks, and
Animals.
yeah. Thank you so much. My daughter Joanna lives in Portland, so I'll be coming back here in a year, and we'll do it again.
Inshallah, inshallah. My favorite word in all of religion is inshallah, because Allah is such a beautiful word, and inshallah means God's the boss, God willing. Yeah.
Yeah, let's hope that God wills it. Thank you. Much love, Sai Baba.
Welcome. Yeah, yeah.
Robert, these pictures I know have great meaning to you. Tell me about them.
Well, this is the first one that I bought, and it just, it was for his compassion, really for his compassion. This one shows me his strength.
So these would have been purchased in 1970.
Yes, yes. This one is my favorite one as when he was young.
Just because of that angelic smile,
so
youthful
beautiful.
smile.
So beautiful, so beautiful. And the others
What
I
about
like.
this one? What does this remind you of? He's so serious in this one.
Well, it's sort of peaceful, actually.
Okay, he is peaceful.
Yeah,
I see that
yeah.
smile on his face, yeah.
Yeah. But this one is special too. Sai Data is the one who took this picture.
All right.
And this is Baba standing between a husband and a wife. And the husband had already died and was dead for 3 days when before this picture was taken, and Baba brought him back to life.
3 days?
3 days. And they said they should bury him, and Baba said, no, don't do it, or, cremate him.
Mm-hmm.
And the story is in one of Murphy's books. There's a story is there. I don't remember his name, but it's for real.
This is a great photo of
And
Baba.
it's a wonderful picture, and here's the one that he developed as a big one from that.
Oh, that's from that same photograph.
Same photograph, same one. And look at the smile in his eyes. Look at the smile.
There's something about the eyes of Baba
Oh,
that just knock people down.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then the one here on the floor that I think you showed us before.
Yeah,
just
that's
briefly.
the one where again the eyes, but that's what I was looking at when I saw my parents in their fishing boat.
And that happened because there is a
And
ray of
had
light
no-
coming through the window. Hold it steady.
Mm-hmm.
And the ray of light hit down here
Yeah, in the circle.
above his foot there in that circle.
Made a circle of light. Yeah.
And you saw right there your parents in a boat
in
with
their
black
fishing
hats
boat.
on.
In their fishing boat.
And it was real time, you're
Absolutely.
saying.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
So here I am talking about Bob with Robert, and I made a slight slip of the tongue and called Robert Bob for a second, and he said immediately after I made that mistake, he told me about what he was doing in another far-flung part of the world.
Well, I was working in a kibbutz, and there was already...
What were you doing in the kibbutz?
Part of my trip around the world, but I always liked the idea of a kibbutz.
But you're not Jewish.
No.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going to brag.
Yeah.
I was the first Christian tourist, a non-Jewish tourist that they had seen as a work boss in the kibbutz. And so it was lucky because in a kibbutz. So it was lucky because I had young people from all over the world working under me. And I tell people the most healthy young people I've seen in the modern world are young people who are raised in kibbutzes.
They know duty.
The
joy of
have
work.
Community.
They have
community.
So how did the Bob Robert think about it?
So there was already a Bob and a Rob on the work list, so I had to become Robert, and it just felt so natural because in Africa, when I would say my name is Bob, they go Bob. I mean, what a kind of a name is that? And so it actually felt really good.
Well, that's great. That's great.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Bartholomew, but when I was working on the Bartholomew chapter, again, I was just feeling all kinds of energy. Well, yesterday, last night and this morning, again, I've been feeling all this energy in my hands, so he's the boss. Well, this is the first one that I bought, and it just, it was for his compassion, really for his compassion. This one shows me his strength.
So these would have been purchased in 1970.
Yes. This one is my favorite one as when he was young.
Just because of that angelic
so
smile, youthful
beautiful.
smile.
So beautiful, so beautiful.